Hello and welcome to Mythic Mind Movies and Shows, an extension of the Mythic Mind Fellowship, where we pursue wisdom on the paths between primary and secondary worlds. I'm Dr. Andrew Snyder, and I'm glad that you're here. All right, welcome back as we get to the last of the mainline Star Wars movies, although we still have a few more to do after this. But today we're talking about the Rise of Skywalker, which we were talking about in the Discord a little bit. I think this is my favorite of the sequels. Now, that's not a very high standard to hit, but it's the least bad in my reckoning. I feel like there are at least a few moments here that have some heart, a few moments that connect with me in something like a real way. And that alone sets it apart from the last two movies. We talked about with the even drawn a blank on what they're even called, the Last Jedi. that it is just it's meandering. There's some at least questionable philosophy that's at least implicit, if not explicit, in that movie. And then in The Force Awakens, so much of it is just echoing the original series, and it is just that it's an echo, a distant echo, and so just a lot of that falls flat for me. But this one, I feel like they do some kind of unique things. It's unfortunate that it's right at the very end when I feel like they start to develop maybe some potential, but that's my vague, very very non-specific take on this movie. But I'd love to hear some of your initial thoughts. David, you weren't with us last time, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, and I really wish that I had gotten around to watching your talk, but I haven't even seen it yet. So it's probably for the best because I don't want to spend this time like rebutting what anybody said in the last one. But yeah, I had forgotten a lot about this movie. I watched it again over the weekend just to refresh my mind. I'd forgotten how Palpatine tells Kylo that he created Snoke and that he's been every voice in his head that he's ever heard. And I'd forgotten that they went to the ruins of the second Death Star. Like I just had I don't know. I felt like I remembered it better than I did, but all of these movies are really well shot, really well made. Maybe not necessarily down to the script level, but but the production values are really good. So yeah, there's always some kind of redeeming quality to that degree. Um, and yeah, my only real hot take on this is that the somehow Palpatine returned line doesn't really bother me. Like it kind of works for me because I think his presence, that makes him the primary antagonist of all three of the trilogies. And him resurrecting himself through using clones like that wasn't invented for this film. That was in the Dark Empire comics that I'd read when I was young. So that wasn't a stretch for me or anything. But um, I think having him be the mastermind, like an evil, even more evil Sith than we had been revealed in the other trilogies, I feel like it kind of brings a sense of closure and it grounds this trilogy more firmly in the Star Wars universe. But I mean, it does kind of come out of nowhere. I wish there'd been more hints of it in the previous two movies, but I think ultimately it worked okay.
I will say, if nothing else, I mean, it allowed him to give that line again about how the dark side is a pathway to many abilities that people consider unnatural. So
Yeah,
that is a good callback.
he should have winked in the camera when he said it.
Right. I think he basically did. Um, cool. Judah, this is your first time watching it, so why don't you tell us something about this movie?
Okay, well, I would say it started out kind of oddly for me as a movie that began with loose ends. Like the first quarter of my notes is almost entirely just statements ending in a question mark, which I thought was kind of funny. uh, a lot of things brought up that didn't really make sense before. Dave was saying like there was no foreshadowing of Palpatine showing up again. I feel like there was a lot of small details that didn't really have any build up, and they're just kind of like, hey, the map is turned a different direction for this movie. But honestly, it didn't wrap up with too many loose ends, which once again, that's kind of opposite of a lot of movies that have questionable writing. So I was kind of pleased by that. The ending was much more tight than in the beginning. Overall, I think, and this is a contrast to the previous two movies, I didn't feel like the story with like Kylo really stood out as much. Kylo and Rey in particular just felt kind of flat to me in this movie. But I think the arc of Poe and Finn was a lot more interesting than before. They kind of redeemed Poe from the last movie when he was not really treated well by the plot, which I appreciated. I think he became a much more engaging character, and you got to see his positive traits come out a lot more. And then for some reason, C3PO was really good in this movie. I don't know where that came from either, but he had like all the best one-liners. So thumbs up to that.
And he has his own kind of death and resurrection of sorts, right?
Yeah.
His sacrifice of his memory, which comes back through the power of friendship with R2. Cool. Um, Reverend David, what do you have for us?
What do I have for you? I feel like a lot of the points I noticed have been discussed already. I feel like nine attempted to fix a lot of eight's problems. No more obvious than when Luke shows up and he catches the lightsaber and has that line about, no, this weapon should not be thrown away, or however the line goes. Yeah, C3PO was far and away had the best one-liners and may have been the best character in this movie. One of the things I noted while watching it yesterday was that the main three characters, Poe, Finn, and Rey, their dynamic in this movie felt like a commentary on the pressure that those three had to be good characters, right? They're, in the context of the movie, they're trying to live up in a sense to Han, Luke, and Leia, or be this generation's Han, Luke, and Leia. And when you have young people that are not ready to handle such pressures, it causes them to, be at each other's throats, right? And you tend to see that a lot more with kids. But but it makes sense. Two out of the three didn't grow up with their parents, so they wouldn't exactly know how to handle pressure. And if I remember correctly, there's a canon comic that explains a little bit of Poe's upbringing. And if I remember correctly, he had his parents, unlike the other two. So why he acts the way he doesn't entirely make sense. But I just thought that their dynamic was interesting. I was disappointed to see that they threw in that kiss between those two female individuals at the end. I felt like that they just threw that in there to say, oh, hey, look at us. We have something that's woke in there. And, it's just, there's no place in Star Wars to try and throw some of that stuff in there. Just trying to think. What else did I note about the movie? That whole line David pointed out earlier, I am every voice that you have ever heard inside your head, me trying to do the voices. That was maybe the best promotion that they had in the lead up. But I also thought it was weird to have that in a commercial. I think it came out like the day before the movie released. And I felt like they could have saved that for the release of the movie. Yeah, those are all the initial thoughts. Admittedly, I'm a bit distracted with this monitor thing.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts off of that. I did kind of appreciate Luke's short or like Luke's little role in this movie in that he does kind of reinstill in her this sense of like the nobility of the Jedi, that this is not a failed institution, like that there's still a path forward here. And so I feel like there's some kind of recovery or redemption of the Luke that we saw for the most part in the last movie. So I appreciated that. I feel like in general, there's much more of a I don't know, I guess a nobility, a heroism, a recognition of the heritage that Rey is receiving, right? Like as kind of cheesy as that, I'm all the Jedi is, like I kind of appreciate what they're going for. At the same time, like if all the Jedi ghosts or spirits or whatever can do that, like why didn't they help Luke? Like, if that's something they can do. So plot wise, it kind of seems like it just threw that in there for whatever reason. But anyways, Ian, tell us something.
So, to me, Rise of Skywalker, I'm not sure how much is that I'd already been so frustrated and angry with The Last Jedi that it felt like there was nothing worse you could do. Um, I certainly don't think that Rise of Skywalker is a good movie, and if I had to, I would definitely go on a long rant about how hyperspace skipping makes worse than no sense. But I could feel that J.J. Abrams and the producers were really trying to make it an ending where they tried to please everyone, and as all compromises go, they failed, but they failed in a way that felt fair to me. So you get your kiss between Rey and Kylo, and then Kylo just dies. So your Reylo shippers are happy, but they're not happy because they don't get a happy after. The anti-Reylo fans are mad because they get a kiss, but they don't have to live with Kylo and Rey being together. I still kind of wish they'd gone all the way and gone with a Rey Kylo ship if they were going to do that, because I think it would have been more interesting, even if I don't personally like it. My personal wish is that they had gotten Rey and Finn together, because I like both of those characters a lot more than Kylo. I think Rise of Skywalker probably suffers most from the I will invent an arbitrary force power to fix the plot problem I have created, whereas The Last Jedi did that most with hyperspace. And so both of them obviously are bad use of in-universe magic or technology, but there was at least a sense that they wanted to create some rules set up and payoff, rather than just subverting expectations and using a hyperspace to destroy a problem in a way that creates so many problems and past things. There's nothing that I think you see the Force doing, like Force healing. I mean, that's been a thing in the video games and the books for a long, long time. And the Force dyad, passing objects over space, there is actually a power in the books that I can connect that to, and a Force dyad is seen in Knights of the Old Republic 2. So I don't know, it felt more connected to ideas that were embedded in the universe rather than doing something that makes things that come before it untenable. And so I kind of liked that more. It also fairly clearly seems to be developing along parallel lines to three of the worst Star Wars books possible. The Jedi Prince series, where there's a secret grandchild of Palpatine. The Legacy of the Force series, where Han and Leia's son becomes a Sith. And the Dark Empire series, in which Emperor Palpatine clones himself and comes back. I don't think it was copying those things, but it is funny that they took the same bad storytelling paths as those books, and I don't think really made it better. But since we're talking about a series which has Last Jedi in it, it still manages to avoid being the worst.
I will say that I agree, and I mean, surprisingly, we have a lot of agreement here on this take. But I agree that based off how they set up Kylo and Rey, I wish he didn't die in the end. I feel like that would have set them up for some really interesting things. Like, for example, as we talked about elsewhere, there's kind of this problem of what do you do when the evil mass murdering villain repents and turns to the good guys, right? Like, what do we do with that? How do we, or do we even fully incorporate him into the fold? How do we secure justice while administering grace? Like, how does that work? I think that would be something really interesting to work with.
Right. I think once a character has killed their father and slaughtered lots of other people in a movie, it's very difficult for them to give them a redemption that is not self-sacrificial at the end of the story because it's just so complicated on what you could do otherwise. What I wish had happened, and again, I wasn't here for the last discussion, but I wish that Kylo had turned to the light when it appeared he was going to in the last movie, and then spent a movie and a half doing good and then ending with a self-sacrificial conclusion. I think that would have been more satisfying for me because again, this is mirroring the original trilogy again. Like the turn was right at the end, and then immediately passing away, pretty much. So yeah, it's not quite as satisfying.
And the prequel trilogy, kind of, in terms of turning right at the end.
True. Yeah, I had hoped in Revenge of the Sith that he was going to become Vader much earlier in the film so we could see Darth Vader in his prime more. But alas, we actually get that in the end of Rogue One, which we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I will say that I mean, for what it was, I appreciated the Kylo's redemption moment, in dealing with the ghost of his father, even if it's only in his own head, right? He says it's a memory. I kind of wish they gave Han like for real Force ghost powers here. But at least him sort of going into his own psyche and the imprint of his father. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a sucker for a good father-child dynamic. And it's the same reason why Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, even though I think Empire Strikes Back is the best objectively. My favorite is Return of the Jedi because I don't know, there's something about I don't know, the power of, man, this can sound so cheesy, but the power of love and family and how all that works for redeeming the galaxy. I mean, I think there's something very powerful about that. And so even if it's sort of an echo of that coming out here, I still appreciated him coming to terms with the ghost of his father.
Right. I like how Kylo is portrayed once he turns to the light, you know. He does a bad jump and says ow, and then, we're now starting to relate to him in a positive light. And then he gives that little shrug when he gets the lightsaber and gets ready to fight the Knights of Ren. And then just that he just gives this sigh, like it's like you get the sense that there's a weight off of his shoulders, that there's kind of a lightness to him. And I love that picture of someone coming to the light from the darkness. But his redemption just still didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like he's still angry through the whole movie, and just wants to kill everyone and be the guy. And then Leia gives her life just to say his name into his head and distracting long enough for Rey to skewer him. Is it Rey's compassion in healing him that brings him to the light? I'm just not quite sure what we're meant to think there.
I mean, that would be my understanding that, he had always kind of struggled with he was tempted to the light side as early as the first of these movies. And
Right.
so that turmoil was always within him. And maybe he convinced himself that there is no such thing as the good guys, like that given the chance, they're going to do him in just like he wants to do them in. And so, I suppose that act of mercy demonstrating the fact that she won, like she effectively killed him, yet still she's showing grace, showing compassion, and so I think that was able to work in the turmoil that was already there.
I I thought that the appearance of Han, whether we think it was a hallucination or if Han did appear in some way, I thought that was also pivotal to his redemption and growth.
I do. I think that's kind of a follow-up though to, because Rey has already shown that compassion and then she leaves in his ship and he's standing there and then he hears Han behind him. And I think we may have mentioned this before, but I had heard that it was supposed to be Hayden Christensen who appeared, which would have been really cool. but I think they decided it was better to bring it full circle for him to come to grips with the fact that he had murdered his father early on. So I don't fault him for that.
I mean, as a someone who really didn't like them killing Han in the way they killed him, I felt this was kind of a redemption of something I really hated about that first Force Awakens movie. And
Yeah.
this goodbye felt, I mean, it was a goodbye. I mean, it's the last movie that's going to feature these characters, probably. I mean, I don't know, maybe with all these AI things, but like, this is probably the last time Harrison Ford is ever going to play these characters. And I
Mhm.
thought this was a much better goodbye. I also, I have to say, I forgot to mention this. I hated Kylo Ren in the first two movies. Like I wanted him to die. I didn't like him. I didn't find him sympathetic. So the fact that they got me to feel sad that he dies in this movie, I thought is actually impressive on J.J. Abrams and um, what's the actor's name again? Uh,
Which one? Kylo's?
yeah, Kylo's actor.
Adam
Adam
Driver?
Driver.
Yeah, I thought Adam Driver did a great job, and I thought that J.J. Abrams, in terms of writing, actually got me to a place where I wasn't actively rooting for his death anymore, which I thought was impressive given how much I hated him.
That's interesting because I would probably have the opposite view, not in your entire statement, but just like you talked about earlier, if what would it have been like if Ren didn't have to die in the end? I would have found that much more unsatisfying than having him have to sacrifice himself or whatever, just on the sense of justice. So that would be my take on that. I don't know. I Yes, he changes, but I would have not felt satisfied if he still didn't be one of the characters who's eliminated by the end of the film.
Right. Like if it's a case where if you live, then facing trial is the moral thing to do. So that's not exactly fun for for a story. But yeah, and speaking of that, the death scene at the end, Reverend David, when you said you were talking about a kiss that you didn't like, I thought it was going to be the kiss between Rey and Kylo because I remember at the theater thinking like, wait, what? Because I'd never seen them as any kind of potential romantic involvement at all. It didn't.
Even with the shirtless scene?
Yeah, yeah, I forgot about that. Been too long since I watched the second one because I absolutely hate it. But yeah, I was surprised by it. And there are other things like they kind of did a Jar Jar to Rose's character and just completely sidelined her in the third one. Like that that seemed odd because she was clearly being set up to be a love interest for Finn in the second one. And then he just like pats her on the shoulder at one point in this movie, and she's otherwise almost a complete non-issue.
Yeah, I do feel bad for for Finn, just for his character. After all this, he just ends alone.
Right. And there were things about his, when they think they're going to die in the quicksand, which was apparently a bunch of black beans I read online. And he says, I never told you. And then people were saying, oh, what he was going to tell her was that he was force sensitive. And I'm like, that's stupid. Obviously, he was going to tell her he had feelings for her. Nobody, when they're about to die, is regretting that they didn't tell you some trivia about themselves. That's ridiculous. But that's what the fans online have said apparently.
I don't know. Based on what Poe says, I think that'd be a hard interpretation to come to.
Right. Yeah. And also, Ian, I don't know if you can confirm this or not, but I heard that all the stuff in this movie that's where we're learning that was like a spice runner and that he had this sordid past that contradicts the comic about Poe that came out before this movie, where he had just been a virtuous rebel fighter his whole life, apparently.
That is 100% correct. It contradicts not just his comic, but also the Before the Awakening novella that came out before Force Awakens that establishes his whole family history. It is genuinely impressive how much they stomped on stuff they'd published before.
I think they just, I'd talked about how in The Force Awakens that he was a Gary Stu. He was just he had no flaws, at all. He was just there to solve all the problems and then disappear when they needed him gone. So maybe they just felt like they needed to give him a little more of an edge and make him, I don't know. He committed treason in the second movie and they just forgave him, which seemed ridiculous to me. But
Well, he's Latin American, so of course he's a drug runner.
no.
And
That
there's
was
our promo
sarcasm,
clip.
just to make sure everybody knows that I thought it was a terrible decision.
Don't worry, I will be posting that out of context.
I didn't know you could get canceled for coming on this show. Yikes.
Andrew always tries his best to clip farm us.
It's all about the clicks.
Well, I was going to say, maybe it's just because, I knew that Carrie Fisher had passed away before they did any of this filming. But none of the scenes with Leia work for me at all. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it just seems obvious that they found unused content that they could, and then they wrote dialogue for others to say so that it would somewhat reasonably be interacting with her, and it didn't do it for me. Like it was very obvious that she was not in the scene. She did not appear to really be reacting to what was going on every time she was on camera.
It's really unfortunate that the Star Wars movies happened in that slice of time when trying to digitally recreate dead actors was such a fad, because it happens in this movie and in Rogue One, and I hate it every time they do it. And it happened in The Mandalorian as well. I mean, obviously Mark Hamill's not dead, but they used to create a young him instead of, like in Solo, recasting him, which I think would have been a better choice. Um, I really wish I hadn't known, because I'm curious if it would have bothered me, because I am actually really forgiving of this stuff. Like, I don't mind when they erase Superman's mustache in Justice League. I know everybody was like, that's terrible, and I didn't have a problem with that. But I knew Leia was dead. So every time she's on screen, I mean, Carrie Fisher, obviously. And every time she's on screen, I'm just like, that's not a real interaction. There's nothing there.
Right. Yeah, and
I guess I could jump in here and say I did not notice. So I know that Carrie Fisher passed away, but I didn't know where that fell in the timeline. So yeah, that was not something that was super obvious to me. So I did not know that it was all pre-captured footage until you guys brought it up now. So
yeah,
but then again, I'm not the most knowledgeable about movie production either. So there's lots of things that would go over my head that
no,
maybe
but
you guys would be able to tell.
that's good if you didn't notice. Like, yeah, she passed away before the second one or before the previous movie came out. So they dedicated that one to her. Um, and she had said that her character was going to have, like the first one was about Han, and then the second one was about Luke, and the third one she was going to be more about her. And so obviously they couldn't really do whatever they might have been planning to do there. But I know people who, when they saw Rogue One, they didn't know the original Star Wars well enough to realize, oh, the guy who played Moff Tarkin, like he surely died in the 80s. And I was shocked at the theater, like, no way, they're actually going to try to do a full CG of Moff Tarkin. And it did not work at all for me. And I know other people who didn't even notice that this CG character who looked like he was out of Toy Story was acting with all these other people. I guess if you're not paying close enough attention, they can get away with it.
Again, like, I wish I would see one of these things without knowing, because in Rogue One, obviously knew Peter Cushing is dead, and obviously when they did young Leia, also, and I know the technology has progressed, but I just wish they'd recast or write around it, because it was really obvious to me, just because I grew up with enough CGI that I can recognize when it's someone doing animating rather than actually, like, it doesn't matter if you mocap. Like, the human eye and brain are really amazing, especially if you know that you're looking at CGI.
Right.
So it just breaks me out completely.
The Luke, I thought, in Book of Boba Fett was pretty well done. Um, as far as I've seen someone trying to make a young version of a character that's not young anymore, that was the best one that I had seen. But yeah, the technology wasn't quite there when they did these movies. It's like Tron Legacy when I saw the trailers for that movie, I didn't even realize the villain was supposed to be a young Jeff Bridges. I thought it was just some new guy because it's very badly done. But that's for a future episode, I hope.
I feel like they could have just done Leia's character, maybe even Carrie Fisher more honor, where if in the Last Jedi, just don't have her fly back into the ship when she shoots off into space. Like, let that be it. She's done. No need to have this miraculous recovery at this point.
I really thought that's what they were going to do, was have her die. I was surprised when she survived that movie after she passed away before it came out.
I was going to ask you, Andrew, if you think there's any parallels to that Hideous Strength, since I know that's one of your books you're very interested in, because we have a reanimated uh, kind of evil spirit influence figure who says stuff.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have this grasping at immortality, I mean, it's all connected. It's that hideous strength. It's the fall of Numenor. It's Star Wars on various iterations of we're going to grasp at unlimited power. But as we do so, it ends up grasping us. And so, even if you might kind of achieve your goal, it's going to be in a very twisted, unnatural kind of form. I mean, even with that hideous strength comparison, you've got now this resurrected corpse of sorts, full of macrobes, right? He's all the Sith, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's the same basic idea. It's this Babel building that inevitably ends up consuming itself, even as it's not Rey's lightsaber that does in Palpatine. It's like his own power essentially being reflected back on him, which shows how evil ultimately consumes itself. This is the result of trying to build yourself up in the wrong way, that inevitably you end up becoming your own destruction.
Yeah, that's a good parallel, Judah, because until he, drains the life out of Kylo and Rey, it's just like this husk. His eyes are white. He's hanging from a machine like a marionette. It is very much like the head.
I feel like they didn't do enough developing the idea of represent, like, almost like, in Adam all died and Christ all are made alive, where Palpatine says, I am all the Sith, and Rey says, I am all the Jedi. I think there's a lot of spiritual potential there, but I don't think they set it up well. So I don't think it quite pays off, even though I actually did like all the voices that, kind of, that felt almost Hebrews 12 to me, with the great cloud of witnesses encouraging us to throw off sin, the dark side. I just wish that had been woven in better. So she might have been hearing voices of the past Jedi all throughout. And so the culmination would have had some payoff instead of being kind of plopped on your lap.
I guess the callback to that would be her repeated like meditation and saying "Be with me" or whatever, and then that's the final answer to that prayer. I guess is what you would call it. I do like your defense of Palpatine's demise, because I'll be honest, at first I thought it was a little bit, repetitive, because that had already happened to Palpatine before. But when you point out that evil always consumes itself, there probably isn't another way it should have ended. Like, that is the most appropriate demise for Palpatine.
It's true, and he had said like he wanted her to strike him down, and then he would be inhabiting her. So maybe this was supposed to be the way, by turning his own power against him, that it wasn't really her that struck him down. Like, she didn't take the action. She was just defending herself against his attack.
It's kind of interesting. Palpatine is the continual martyr, right? Strike me down. He's constantly calling for people to kill him.
Do you think that is an intentional parallel with Obi-Wan saying, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful? Is that like a thing that happens?
I don't know. I mean, Obi-Wan's statement seemed to be kind of empty, so
Hey, I have another Obi-Wan hater. Yes.
I don't know. I think bluffing in combat is a legitimate tactic.
Yeah, but it didn't.
It wasn't a
I mean,
bluff.
yes, he got Luke away, but he didn't really become more powerful, is my argument.
Well, I mean,
Of course he did.
yeah, he's able to appear anywhere and just constantly nag Luke by talking right into his head if he wants. Like, yeah,
I mean, yeah, I mean he became more powerful by ennobling Luke to complete his task, right? And so his martyrdom achieved a greater victory than he would be able to achieve simply as an old man tottering around giving advice.
Man, I really wish they'd brought Palpatine back in Force Awakens and then had Kylo strike him down and then shown the consequences of that. That would have been more interesting.
Versus striking down Snoke.
Yeah, because Snoke was dumb.
yeah.
All
All this
apologies to Andy Serkis, but that was a dumb character.
this would have required them to have outlined the trilogy before they started filming, which they clearly did not. In
I
fact,
feel like that's a recurrent problem in Star Wars.
yeah. Um, I was reading like, the IMDb trivia about these movies, and like Mark Hamill said that after he read the script for The Last Jedi, he just said to Rian Johnson, I hate everything you've done to this character from top to bottom, but now it is my job to try and realize your vision as best as I can. I think Mark Hamill even made up like his own backstory for how he ended up where he was, just so he could get through it. But then in this movie, as a Force ghost, he tells Rey that he was wrong. So that's also a bit of a redemption of the Luke character, I think. I'm sure Mark Hamill appreciated that aspect of it as well.
So one thing that a thought that struck both my wife and I watching the end of the movie, um, actually a little bit of watching the setup toward the end where in order to get to Exegol, you have to go through these like very dangerous areas, a very specific path, and it seemed like a descent into hell. And then at the end, when Palpatine gets melted away, everything else then is destroyed in that entire arena, and it looked like a destroying of hell. And so I thought that was a little bit of an interesting semi-spiritual aspect added there to the end.
Yeah, it definitely gave me strong like Malachor vibes of, I'm going to go to this destroyed Sith infested planet to harrow hell, I suppose.
Yeah, the throne that she's supposed to assume just gets completely wiped out, and then the throngs of whoever the heck they are in the crowd are all getting blown away and stuff as well. Um, but yeah, it is a cool imagery. And I still think this is random, but it is, I've seen the meme, but it really is funny that she's saying that terrible things have been done with this blade while she's holding the lightsaber that killed the Jedi younglings in her other hand. Just that does kind of crack me up.
That is a good point. I wish I had realized that. I was more just confused by why people are even using physical knives anyway.
Yeah, well, the Sith, they really, it's just way more goth to have a physical object than a laser sword.
Yeah. I do think this is not the greatest segue, but it is a segue into something that I was thinking about watching this movie. Obviously, Rey is a very emotional character. She's stoic, but you can tell that there's a lot of internal like turmoil and tension. Uh, previously, the Jedi were supposed to, disavow emotions, shun that stuff. But there's no indication in any of the trilogies or sequel trilogy, as far as I can tell, that Rey's emotions aren't acceptable or should be suppressed or something. The only thing she seems to be dissuaded from feeling is hatred, and you see that in this movie that hatred is potentially her path to the dark side. So, does that mean that they're trying to, or do we view this from outside the universe as the writers are trying to expand the Force and say that you can be a Jedi and be emotional, or is this an in-universe criticism saying the Jedi Order got it wrong back in the prequel days, and they didn't really have to be these like ascetic warriors?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point that we're getting more deinstitutionalized, where she is obviously picking up the Jedi heritage and moving forward with it. But she is doing that. She's moving forward. It's not the same thing it used to be. I mean, there's no council anymore. There's really nothing but her at this point, as far as what the Jedi is. And so I think that we're supposed to give this idea that she's a trailblazer, right? And so she's kind of figuring out some new pathways here. So I don't know if it's a critique of saying that this is how it always should have been. I think it is a way of saying that we are in a new era now.
A new era where it's okay to fall for the Sith lords, you know.
It was.
Because we were already given. Okay, yeah, that's not good. But I mean, already as early as at the very least the prequels with like Qui-Gon, as we talked about, there's reason to think that maybe the Jedi Code isn't perfectly aligned with like the ideals of the light side. Like maybe they got some stuff wrong here. This is an institution, and institutions can get things wrong.
Yeah, and she says she wanted to take his hand. She wanted to take Ben's hand, and she was not prepared to take Kylo Ren's hand. So you could, from a Christian perspective, it's like a rejection of asceticism. It's that you need to master your emotions. You don't have to outlaw your emotional reaction. You just need to be in control and have a right mind about these things.
Yeah, I mean, this is another reason why I think it'd be interesting. I mean, the whole justice issue aside, if Kylo were to live, they could deal with this. I mean, our attachment's okay, and it definitely seems implied in this movie that they are.
But we haven't talked at all about Hux and the weird arc that he takes in this.
I was just thinking about that actually. I'm looking over my notes and I just went over that one. He's like the only high official in the First Order in the first two movies, and then suddenly there's a whole like council of generals or whoever they are, and yeah.
Yeah.
No wonder he got bitter. You know, he didn't just get passed over; he got a whole bunch of other people promoted next to him.
Yeah, he kind of had an anti-climatic death where it gets revealed that he's the spy, and then all right, he's gone.
Right. And we suddenly have this guy who's a remainder of the old guard who hasn't been there all along. He's just suddenly there in this film, but sort
I
of
mean,
mirrors
Palpatine.
Tarkin. Yeah. Right. But he says I was with you then and I'm with you now or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a little all over the place. So Ian, I just want to make sure, like your problem with the hyperspace skipping thing that they do, to me, not being like a super in-depth Star Wars nerd, but a Star Wars nerd nonetheless, hyperspace is not instantaneous. And if you were just going to randomly jump locations in space, 99.99% of the time, you'd just be in the middle of uninteresting nowhere instead of it almost looked like stuff out of the multiverse of madness or something. The things that he was jumping into, like one of them really was weirdly mirrored, like there was a mirror image. I couldn't tell what I was even looking at, but yeah, it was an exciting sequence, but it did not make Star Wars sense. The same as using hyperspace to blast through the ship in the previous movie.
So the specific problems I have with hyperspace skipping are number one, I don't think you should be able to hyperspace through something that you're right next to because they hyperspace right through walls. And I think theoretically I understand that you're going to another dimension, but apart from the fact that I think you need to be outside of a gravity well because of what Han says in A New Hope, um, hyperspacing through things means it's no longer a technology that has any real rules. It's just a button you press to get out of a problem. The second problem is all of the TIE fighters, even the ones that are pointed in different directions, instantly jump to the exact same place. And now we know they don't have a homing beacon on the Falcon. So they're somehow magically, instantly calculating the exact same place that the Falcon's going. Now, maybe you could theorize that the Falcon jumping creates a lingering hyperspace hole that TIE fighters can follow because reasons, but that is not how hyperspace has ever been previously understood to work.
Right.
So,
And even TIE fighters having hyperdrives is has not been the case in the past. But yeah,
well, to be fair, these are special TIE fighters with the under. They got two people and they got the guns underneath, like the one that Kylo and Poe find. No, sorry, Finn and Poe find. So they're a special edition that have special hyperspace. So
gotcha.
I already knew that these TIE fighters are going to break the rules because they're special.
Limited edition TIE fighters. Gotcha.
Did any of you guys think that Lando adds anything unique to the movie, or is he just another, nostalgic callback?
I wouldn't say he substantially adds anything, but I still kind of like him. I feel like of all the legacy characters, he's the one that is himself. Like they didn't mess him up. He is Lando, and so I appreciated his involvement simply for that reason. They didn't mess him up.
The only thing I questioned about him was why he was on the same planet for so long. He was just chilling out there,
You
I
know,
guess.
it reminds me of the time when Tolkien was asked why they encountered Tom Bombadil in the Old Forest, and his answer is that's where he lives. So that's just where Lando is. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
like that comparison.
it was very serendipitous when they encountered him at this random festival on a random planet.
I mean, Billy D. Williams is great, and he's not in enough stuff. Like a lot of the Star Wars, I mean, except for Han Solo, really none of the Star Wars actors kind of went on to that much outside of Star Wars. So it was really nice to see him again. He's just really charming and fun. Although I did wonder why does he have to magically discover his daughter? Like that felt a little convenient to me.
Do you think that's what was happening there? I thought that's what was
I thought
going to
that's what was
happen
going on.
because he just says, do you know where you come from? And she says no, and he says, let's figure it out. But yeah, I don't know. That would have been interesting. Yeah, and she was also yet another potential love interest for Finn that didn't go anywhere, at least not during the
They
during
did
the
not
movie.
let Finn do enough kissing, is what I'm saying.
Why do you think they keep jumping around like that? It's the hyperspace skipping of romantic relationships, I guess.
Oh man, I had another thought and I forgot it. Oh well, I'll try to think of it. My notes are exhausted, so this is off the top of my head.
I will say this is not really significant, but a little trivia that it is kind of cool that this film canonized Revan in Star Wars. One of the,
Yes.
the trooper groups is what is it, the Legion of Revan or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had not noticed that before this last viewing. That is cool. And I'd thought that some of those statues that you just kind of see a blink of, one of them looked kind of like oh wait. What's the name of the void? Is is it
Uh,
Nihilus or
y-
is that the dude from Mass Effect?
yes and yes.
Okay. Okay. I did I and now Ian apparently had a problem with it, but I liked seeing Wedge show up.
Oh, I have to explain why I get mad about Wedge. So again, in in that Before the Awakening novel, and in the what's it called? The Aftermath trilogy, Wedge is established to be um, Greg Grunberg's character's stepfather. And Wedge shows up right after Greg Grunberg dies in that battle. And he's just having a great time. And I'm sitting there being like, wait a minute, that was your stepson. Now, I understand that people who don't read the books don't understand that Greg Grunberg and Wedge Antilles have a step relationship. But you don't have to kill Greg Grunberg off, is what I'm saying.
That's kind of funny. I did not know that. Yeah, and in all these movies, the ones that J.J. Abrams directed, like everybody who was ever in Lost or Alias had bit roles
All
in
this
these movies.
atomic modern staying stuff.
Well, what do we think of at the very end, Rey taking the Skywalker mantle? I didn't find that terribly compelling myself. I feel like if we're going to have anyone be the Rise of Skywalker, I kind of like having Kylo take that role.
Hmm. Well, she looks over and sees Luke and Leia there, like they're giving their blessing. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. It's an interest. She didn't have a last name, and both of them trained her. So I think it's pretty nice and poetic.
What do you mean? Palpatine, right?
Right, but she didn't know it. She didn't have one before. Yeah, it's like having the last name Hitler. It's retired, man. You're not using that anymore.
I kind of wish she'd gone with Rey Solo because I feel like she had a better relationship with Han than with Luke. But I'm not mad about it. A lot of people like mad, but I don't hate Rey. I just think she's really underwritten.
Her relationship with Han, though, was over the span of like 2 days.
How
So
long was her relationship with Luke?
I don't know how long she was there on the island with him.
I think it was clearly supposed to be like a couple hours, given that that's how long the space chase lasts.
Well, maybe time can run at different rates in different parts of the galaxy, bring in some of that differential physics.
Yeah, relativity. It's like from Interstellar. That planet he's on is next to an event horizon or something.
I mean, I think, we would all agree that Skywalker would have worked better as maybe a renaming of the Jedi instead of a last name. I it also would have made more sense if they based the Skywalker name off of her relationship with Leia, that they kind of try to force the whole master apprentice relationship through the previously filmed footage. Um, why did she need a last name? Like, I think that's more of my thing personally.
I guess because like her main emotional motivation through the entire trilogy is to figure out who she is. So that's the resolution that they decided to give. Strong or not, it does bring her emotional journey of self discovery, I guess, to a close.
Yeah, I mean, she is the little they give to her specific character motivations in the first movie is about her being abandoned, and then the big revelation, which this movie completely destroys in the second movie, is again about that. So I feel like it does make sense that she would want family. I mean, it's a very Jane Eyre situation of she's never been able to find people who are hers and who she belongs to. And so Luke and Leia looking at her from the Force, and she understands that she belongs to their tradition and their family now. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, and if you don't have a last name, it's a lot harder to get a bank loan. So
You got to
I,
pay for those speeders somehow.
I mean, I understand. I mean, in the sense that I get, why they did it. I felt like it causes more problems by giving her specifically that last name. And as you guys have mentioned, I think there could have been better ways to make that whole, she's part of the family connection than to give the last name. They could have, I don't know, I guess given her her own last name or just stay with a first name. I mean, how many people do, just, go by, a single name? I don't know. I feel like Star Wars needed to avoid more problems than what they had already caused.
So you're suggesting like a share situation,
Yeah.
just Rey. uh, I mean, now that I'm just still not totally satisfied in general with these movies, but I do have to say that I appreciate that in the end that she is becoming part of something bigger than herself. that she is continuing the traditions that have been laid out before her. It's not total postmodern existentialism. I mean, there are elements of that, I suppose, but they don't completely go down in that direction. And so that is something that I appreciate.
Now, isn't there a series coming out about Rey, supposedly?
Supposedly, I think it keeps getting delayed.
Hmm.
Yeah, considering that they've announced it like 3 years ago, and we already have Starfighter in production and the Mandalorian and Grogu coming out next year, it seems like it might be like that Ryan Johnson trilogy they announced.
From what I keep hearing, they keep getting a director and they keep firing that director, and I guess it's just they can't agree on a vision. I actually heard today a rumor that Adam Driver tried to um, put together his own Star Wars movie that follows the character, and that he had gotten a writer for it, and I guess Disney shot that down.
That seems really dumb of them, honestly.
Yeah, I think I saw that same article, headline, something today, and I just confirmed it here real quickly that yeah, he tried to put together a film called The Hunt for Ben Solo, but basically Disney said you're dead, your character's dead. There's nothing we can, there's no way to get around that, and so they nixed it.
They
You
couldn't
know,
have made it like a
a prequel.
before the sequel movie or something.
I mean, I suppose they could have, but I guess that wasn't Adam Driver's particular vision for this project.
Fair.
Now, considering that the director of the Ray movie was clearly just not good at reading the room or telling what time it is, going around talking about how she didn't like men and wanted to make men uncomfortable. I think the fact that they fired her was a good thing, but they definitely need to find a director who isn't crazy.
Well, the Minecraft movie took like 10 years or something to finally get a director that worked, so there's always hope for a product regardless of how good it is.
So what
What
you're
an
saying is we need the
analogy.
Napoleon Dynamite director for the Ray movie.
I would love a Napoleon Dynamite style movie in the Star Wars universe. That would be fantastic. I would be first in line for that.
That would be bold.
That sounds wonderful. Wait, is wonderful the right word? It sounds interesting.
Well,
Any
Jack
other?
Black has
Yeah,
already
go ahead.
been in Star Wars, so you never know.
Oh, I forgot about that.
As
Who
long as there's a character that has a T-shirt that says "Vote for Kenobi."
who did you say has already been in Star Wars?
Jack Black.
Yeah,
Oh,
alongside Stacey Abrams, right?
No, that was Star Trek. It was
Oh,
Lizzo. That was
Lizzo, yeah,
Jack Black.
yeah.
Lizzo.
yeah,
I
Lizzo was his
actually
wife. Yeah.
just watched that recently because I was watching the third season of The Mandalorian on a trip just like last week. And there's a lot of thoughts I have on the politics of that episode. So if we ever discuss The Mandalorian, the government system there is absurd.
Yeah. Christopher Lloyd was also in that episode.
And a bunch of robots.
Yep. I was looking up, like I took a screenshot on the credits of this movie of all of the voices of Jedi past, and I was looking them up because I didn't recognize all of them, but I noticed Jennifer Hale did one of the voices and Freddie Prinze Jr. did one of the voices, and
That
yeah,
means
there's a
Basilisk canon, right?
Well, Freddie Prince Jr. Voices the character Kanan Jarrus in the show Rebels, so he was just returning uh,
okay,
as his character.
okay, yeah, I've never watched that.
Actually, Jennifer Hale
Watch
might have
it.
been doing like what's her name, the Twi'lek Jedi, because I think she did her in the Clone Wars. But
Yeah,
I prefer to think it was Bastila.
Yeah, I like
Isla
that we're getting
Secura,
Bastila and Revan in this.
yeah, Isla
Old
Secura.
Republic movies.
Well, any other thoughts, questions, trivia, rants?
We we made it.
All right. Well, then I guess we'll go ahead and call it. Next time we'll pick it up with Rogue One.
One last comment. Happy
Mhm.
70th anniversary of Return of the King.
That too. Yes.
Best book.
I'm glad we ended this on a highlight now. All right, we'll go and wrap it there. Thanks. All right, thank you for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to all Mythic Mind podcasts, including this one, the main Mythic Mind podcast, and Mythic Mind Games. Also, if you appreciate what we do here, then I welcome your support on Patreon at patreon.com/mythicmind, or you can just click that link in the show notes. Any level of support provides all the Mythic Mind podcasts delivered early and ad-free to a single feed, full Discord access, and you can join our chats. Also, I've changed how I'm framing the Elder Scrolls and Philosophy study that just got underway. Over time, I'm going to be posting the content to YouTube and the Mythic Mind Games podcast, so make sure that you're subbed to my channel and to that show. But also, all patrons are now welcome to participate in the live meetings for the Elder Scrolls and Philosophy. And you also get all the content as I produce it week to week, and so you won't have to deal with the delay that the public feeds will be receiving. And so all you need to do is to sign on as a patron at any level and find the link to the Elder Scrolls and Philosophy course in the pinned post on Patreon. I hope to see you there, and if you're listening on the public feed, the next thing to come out from Mythic Mind will be on my YouTube channel and on the Games podcast this Friday with a story overview of Morrowind. Hopefully you'll hear from me then, and until next time, Godspeed.